Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's great to have you guys here. And for those of you who are joining my channel for the first time, this is Code with Femi, and I've been in the IT industry for many years, and I've gotten to a point, in my career that I want to share my experience, share my journey, and just to add value to aspiring developers, software engineers out there, and as well as small to medium businesses. So basically I'm going to be talking about, code, how to like implement, software using different technologies, and as well as talking about different processes in the IT industry in terms of software, development life cycle. So in this actual video, we're going to be looking at how you can connect your application to a database. From our last video, before I actually go there, I wanted to say something. From my previous video, actually, I've got this mustache coming into my mouth. And my wife was like, You look weird in that video." So I had to actually trim up that to look even, nice now. So yeah, that's why I'm looking fresh now. So I'm sorry about that. So let's get into the business. The actual thing is I want to show you guys how you can connect your application to a database. So from my previous video, I actually showed you guys how you can, create your own database, set up a fresh table in that database, and as well as being able to, you know, to to create a login. So have a login that you can use to actually connect to your database anytime you want to. So in this actual video, we're going to be looking at how you can actually, connect with this database, for instance, my first database. So we're going to be using this as an example. I'm going to just have to remove this because one of the things I want to point to you is that for you to be able to connect your application to your database, you have to ensure that you have the necessary plugins within your application. So we have a plugin. I'm just going to open up my browser. I've opened up some of the links that will be useful for this actual video. So the first one is an ORM. So we have something we call the object relational mapper. This actually helps your application to be able to map to your database, to be able to speak the language that your database understands, because your database actually is written in SQL, which is a structured query language, and then you have your application where you can write. In cases in my case now, I'm writing my application in C# .NET Core. So basically, the database doesn't understand this actual language. So for you to be able to communicate from your application with the database, you need a plugin. We'll call it that. This is actually like a plugin that you have to install in your actual um IDE for you to be able to communicate with it, and you have to do some setups. So the thing is, I'm gonna be quite quick so that we can actually achieve a lot, because there's a lot to be done here. So the first thing you want to do first is to actually install this plugin. I would encourage you to go read up on this, see how you can use it to be able to configure your application to be able to speak to the database. But so the first thing you need actually is to actually find out what is your application connecting to, because remember from the IDE video that I shared with you guys, we just actually just ran a command and it created all this. It created all this. I didn't have to do anything. It created all these different files, and you can see the default, it actually uses this actual database plugin, which is SQLite. And this SQLite is actually like a lightweight database. It's actually a file that it gets created within your application. But for this actual demo that I'm gonna show you now, I'm gonna use SQL Server, which is the one we installed from our previous video, which is this one. I'm gonna make sure that it's connecting to this one. You can still use SQLite. We can talk about SQLite later, but for this actual video, we're going to talk about SQL Server. So the first thing you want to do is you want to change that to actually use SQL Server. And how do you do that? So the first thing you want to do is you want to install the package. So for those of you who don't have an installer for a package, you have to first go into NuGet. So NuGet Manager is actually the actual package manager that we use in .NET to actually pull down libraries that we can use within our application. You can ask me, what is a library? So library is actually a collection of code that has been written in a way that it can be reused by by multiple people, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just easily pick up that library, you can plug it into your application and you can use it. It's just like your Chrome, like a web browser where you install different plugins, extensions to it. So it's exactly the same thing. You just need to install this package manager, and this will enable you to be able to pull libraries from this actual repo, the NuGet repo, and you can always use that within your application. So I've already installed mine, but if you haven't, just search NuGet and then you can actually install it in your application. Once you've installed it, what you want to do is you want to also go find what is the actual library do I need. Let's just go here and say NuGet, let's say EF entity framework, that's entity framework, SQL Server. Yeah, let's do that. And then you can see that I've gone there already, but in there it actually tells me what is the actual name of the actual library I'm looking for, because this is what I want to use to connect to my database, my SQL Server database. So what I can do now is I can actually just copy that name because that's what I really need. And then what I want to do in Visual Studio is I want to use Control Shift P, and that brings up this actual place where I can actually start searching for for things. But this is what we want to, this is the context we want to like focus on, which is NuGet Package Manager, because I want to add a package. So you click on that and that should actually open up another input box, and then you can actually paste that that library. You say enter and it will search for you, and you can see there are different options, but this is the one we want, and it's going to install the latest stable version for us. When I click on that, you can see that it gives me different versions, and then you can always go for with the latest stable version, because these ones are still preview, which tells me that it's not stable yet. So I would go with the 5.0.8. When I click on that, you can see it tells me there that it in a way it's yeah in a way it's actually doing something. It seems like it has been installed. Okay, it's actually doing that now. And what another thing you can also do is you can actually check in your actual CSproj IDE CSproj, which is your C# project file, and this actually shows you like the libraries you have. So currently these are the libraries I have, and you can see there that this has been added to the file, which tells me that it's been installed. And the next thing you want to now do is you want to look into that data folder, because the data folder is where this actually happened, where we have all this is where we store our actual context, where we set up different statements on how we want to connect to the tables, and make sure that we can actually pull data out of the database. So for this one, you can see this was already generated for us. I didn't generate this, and it gave us some migration files. So migration, your migration is basically like the actual statements that will be executed against your database. So we call this a code first approach. So instead of me going into the database and creating my tables here with SQL script, I can also do that just by creating migration scripts. And how do you do that? If you go to, so the first thing you want to do is you want to install this actual tool, which is your tool that helps you to be able to do your migration. So you want to like go to your terminal, and then we just have to paste that in, and then you just press enter. That actually, okay, it tells me that I've already installed, but if you haven't installed it, then just run that, then that actually installs it for you. And once that is installed, that means you can actually start writing like migration commands. So you can see it says verify installation, so you can actually verify your installation by doing that. Let's do that. Let's see what happens. So you can see there, it shows you information about it, the version, and you can see all the different commands that we have. But in terms of the migration, this is actually you saying that you want to make your code create the different tables, that in the database. So instead of you keeping track of things here and also keeping track of things here, like it's just fine for you to do it in your code. So this will actually create your database for you from code instead of you coming here to do it. So there's another approach that we call database first, which means that you want to come here and actually create the tables manually yourself, and then you go into the data into your application and actually now start creating the classes that will map to those tables. So for this one, you can see that we've installed that, and let's just go back to that actual site and see the different commands they've got. The one I want to use is yeah, we're getting there. So you can see there it says .NET-ef MigrationId. So that means that if you want to add a new migration into your application for your database, then you can actually use this. I'll put all these links in my description, and you can always use this. So actually let's just remove this actually, because this is actually something that I just want to show you guys. So you see I've deleted that. I also want to restructure this in a way because I'm going to have another context coming into this place. So I'm just going to create a new file. I'll call this security, right? Let's call this security, and then let's move these two folders into that security folder. No, I think that was not right. Let's try again. Oh, sorry. Let's just say security, and then I move this migration and that into that folder. Yes, let's move it. Then we create a new folder, call it web. Right in there, I want to now have a new I'm just going to copy this just to save time, right? And then I'm just going to rename this to let's call this web context. Okay, so this is your web context, and in this web context we're just gonna change that to DbContext, and I will just explain that shortly now. Let's rename that to web, and then web as well, and then that would be your web context. Okay, so you can see that we have a web context, right? And also now we have two contexts. I've actually just structured this in a way to make it much more easier for you to see what is going on here. So we have security context, we have web context. So security context is saying that this is actually the context that controls how user log in into your application, how they they log off, how they recover their password, and all those things is actually being tracked by this context. This web context can actually be something that has to do with your domain, your business domain, like creating a person, creating an address, creating an invitation, creating a to-do list. This can actually stay here. I like to separate things this way, but if you don't mind, you might actually want to use this actual application context, but I'll prefer to separate it this way to keep things clean and straightforward. So you can see here, actually I have a web context. So web context is where I'm going to actually create a new all my mappings for my tables into the database. And if you check, so this DbContext is what tells you how you can actually connect. It gives you information as to how you can connect to the database in terms of the queries. So the queries we write is actually written in link. So we use link to to query the database. Link is spelled this way: ILNK Q I link is spelled LINQ. Yeah, LINQ. So we're gonna dive deeper into this some later, but for now the focus is actually just to get this thing to connect to the to the database. So you see I've given it a structure. The next thing you want to do is you want to go back into your startup class. Your startup class is actually the the class that actually runs first when you start up this is one of the classes that runs first when you start up your application. So the program one is the first one. This is your entry point into your actual application. When you start up this application, it comes in here, and then it actually runs the startup class. You can see. So from your program, it runs the actual startup class. Startup class actually does some things. You can see here, it pulls your configuration from the actual file, these files that you have there. The app setting is your configuration file. This is where you specify your connection string, like the actual information that you need. Is you telling the application that this is the information for you on how to connect to the database. So this is like your, like, let's see this like a, let's just call this like a link information between your application and the database. So in here, the first thing you want to do is you want to specify what server, what is the server. And the server you can get from your DB. You can always go to connect. You can see that that's my server name. I can just copy that as it is, right? And go back there and actually put it there. The next thing you want to specify is initial catalog. So your initial catalog is is actually basically the name of your database. It's actually your database. What database are we, is your application going to connect to? So let's close this. It's my first database, right? We go there and actually put that in. The next thing is it's going to ask, how do you want to authenticate? You can actually use integrated security if you know that your application already has, and you can just set this to true, which means that it's just gonna use your Windows or your Windows credentials to connect directly to this actual database server. Or if you've already provisioned some login, a login within the space, you can actually just take that out and actually just say user ID, and then what is your user? My user is test. That is what I provisioned here. If you can remember, it was test, and then you just have to specify semicolon to separate your different statements, and then your password. Okay, and for that one I actually made a test. So remember, your password has to be very strong. It has to be sensitive. It's sensitive, so it has to be very, very strong, and something that no one can really guess. So just make sure you use a very strong, like using characters, using numbers, using casing and all that. Make it much longer to keep it much safer. But for this demo, I'm just keeping it simple. So this is what I've set up for this demo. And then you can see now we've set up a connection string for our database. Let's go back to the startup class. You'll be wondering, like, how is it going to pull it? You can see here, this actual configuration it's actually coming from that file, right? And also we can see what is different between app settings development and app settings. So app settings development is actually based on an environment. So let's say, for instance, this environment is a development environment, like this machine, rather, sorry, this machine is a development machine. Then I can actually just override whatever I have here with what is here. But if you can even add more files if you want to. You can have app settings dot, let's say, production, if you want to like host it in the cloud or somewhere and actually override what is on here with that production file. But for now, we're just going to deal with this using the app settings. So you can see there, we just have to make sure that we change that to now say use SQL Server. You can see it's already popping up. So this tells me now that I can use SQL Server, right? Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. So now I have SQL Server connected to my application. I'm using that default connection. And if you go back to your application, you can see that the name is default connection. So this actually doesn't really matter what you call it. I can call it code. Let's even do that. Code with them, right? I can call it that. Whatever name you want to give it, but give it sensitive name. Give it give it a name that is sensible. Give it a name that is clear, and then we can just put it there, and it's gonna be the same. You get, so you can call it whatever you want to call it, but I just want to use something very, very clear. Maybe we should use first connection. Let's use first DB connection. Let's use that. I think that is even much nicer. And then I'm gonna go back there and change that first DB connection. You can see that's just for that. And then you can see there are other things going on here, of which we're gonna touch later. I don't want to like waste too much time on actually just going through this. It's the main goal is to just connect this application to the database. So we have that, right? We've connected. So remember, we have two contexts now. So what you want to do is you want to copy that. Not all that. Yeah, just that. And then you want to make sure that you do exactly the same thing for the new one, which was the web context that we just applied. You can see there. So they use the same connection strip because they speak to the same database. So for web context, it doesn't have any entities. So entities in code is equivalent to tables in the DB. So your tables, which is this one person, is actually going to be, then you must create an entity for within this space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file in here. I'm sorry, a folder in here, and call it entities, right? And in there, I want to put in my person entity, right? So person is here. So this is actually just me now going and saying, what do we want to call this? This is, what's the name of this? So it is IDE dot, let's call this this is data. Always go through the actual flow. So it's data and then web. It's good to actually, you know, make sure your namespace matches the where how your where your file is, the location of your file within, you know, the solution. So, and then we have entities, right? Entities, right? And then we have public class, and then in there we have person. So I do that, and then I just want to create a constructor. My constructor is basically just for cases where I want to like instantiate some list here. But because we're not instantiating any list, I'm just gonna go straight into creating the necessary keys I need and the fields I need. So let's just do this and say int person ID. Copy, let's copy that, space that, and then string, then first name. Copy that, paste that, let's say last name. Okay, then let's just say date created. So this is just the date it was created. We'll change that type to a date time. Okay, which, so you can see this is an integer, which means a number. This is actually different characters you can use, and then we have your date time. You can see that actually tells me something is wrong, right? That means that it can't find this. So this is another thing you have to bear in mind. You need to sometimes import like libraries into, or namespace into your actual class. This is how you can actually like resolve some of these things. So sometimes you might need to resolve using, you know, this is actually you importing another library from another place into this actual class so that you can use some of the things it's got in there. So this is just, you know, your entity. We've created a basic entity. Now what we want to do is want to register it within your context. So we just make sure that we use public in our case means that it's actually accessible by any, you know, any actual class. Other class can reference this when you say public. So public, this class can be referenced by another class. That's what it means. I'm still going to go into OOP like later. Like there's fun things coming up, man, like even solid principles. We're going to talk about all that, but let's just be quick. So I have that. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to say db set. So db set is actually how you specify what is actually an entity that can actually be, you know, that you can use to communicate with the database. So we have your person, and then we can just say person. Then you just want to use get, you know, you access your get and your setters to be able to make sure that you can actually set this person, or you can also get it if you need it. And you can see here, it helps me here with IntelliSense to tell me I need to reference a namespace, of which I've done, because this actual person is that class that we've just created, this one. So we're not we're just referencing it here in this context. And that thing you should bear in mind is that there are cases where you don't need some namespace. You can just remove. You can just remove it. So you can see there's even more here that I don't need. I just remove it. So always make sure your file is clean and just as, you know, it does just what it needs. So we have the person. We've set up our context, right? That's beautiful. The next thing you want to do is so we have our web. The entity is there. We've registered in the context. That is perfect. We have our application relocated to the security folder, and then we can go back here and also see, okay, we done now with this, right? The next thing you want to do is you want to start creating your migration files. So let's go back to let's go back to this one. So this is where you need to use this command. This is the command you can use to actually start creating migrations, because we have created some new information here. We need to tell we need to generate files for it so that it can actually run against the database. And how do you do that? Remember that the first thing we did was we installed this actual plugin. There was a plugin we installed, which was the first thing we did, which was this actual .NET-ef, that we installed globally. The next thing you now want to do is you want to make sure that you can always use that to generate the actual files based on the new information you've added to your application for it to communicate with the database. So you just have to let's paste that in, and then we'll call this initial creation. Let's call this initial creation. And then one major thing you need to bear in mind is that you need to use the output. The reason why you need to use the output, you can see that the short is -o, which means that it's gonna put those generated files into a specific folder for you that you have specified. If you don't specify O, it's just gonna like put everything within a migration. Another thing you also have to bear in mind is that you also have to use context. So --context means that you want to target a specific context, because in this scenario we have multiple contexts. We have web context and then we have application context. So you want to target the specific one you want to do the migration for. So because you need to, when you have multiple, but if it's just one that you have, you don't really need to specify the context. You don't, if you're not doing a custom folder path structure like I did, then you don't need to specify the output. But for this you need to. So we have a context. So the context, the first one I want to do is the application DbContext, right? And then for my output, let's just move back to that place. For my output, I want to say, where do I want to put the migration files? So I want to put it in here because I have a folder already. So it is actually going to be, remember, this is your path, which is IDE. So IDE there. So the next one would be data /security, and then / migrations, right? And then you just want to press enter. So what this is going to do is going to generate those files. I'm just going to see quickly what is going to generate now for us. But this is actually how you do code first, where you just use the right tools to be able to generate the right the actual files that is needed for you to okay, there's a problem here. Seems like maybe there are some files I've not saved. Let's just see. Could be a problem. Let's save these files. Let's clean that up, because sometimes when you don't save the file, it might still be referencing old code. Let's see. Let's go in. Okay, save now. Let's run it again. Let's see what happens. So actually, just always remember as well to save your file whenever you make changes to the actual file. Just make sure you save it before you run, because you might run into this error when if you don't actually save your files. You can see now that it actually succeeded. So you can see just right now, this is freaking amazing. I can see it actually generated some information for me. So remember, the actual application context already has some inbuilt information on as to how you can authenticate, do all the user control roles and logins and claims and all that. So basically you can see there that we have this information, which is amazing, because now you have your ASP roles, you have your ASP users, you have your ASP role claims, and then you have your you have your different tables, which is amazing. This thing is all generated from ground up for us. And then the next thing you want to do is you need to generate the same thing for the web context, but now we just have to make a little bit of a change here. which is going to change that context to web, right? And then we're just going to make sure that that is pointing to the right, which is data web migration. So it's going to automatically create that folder for us. So let's just say enter. So as you can see, it's actually just creating the files for you, but you would see there now that that actual those files are gonna come up now. Yeah, almost there. There we go. You can see there. Isn't that beautiful? And you can see it's based on that actual class that we created. So remember, we created this class, but you can, if you check here, you would see that we have some information here. This is what is going to run against the DB whenever we run this application, if this table hasn't been created yet, or even this migration hasn't been executed yet, because this is actually migration. And also you can check the design. The snapshot is also something you can also check to see. So that actual person ID, it would actually auto like generate it in a way for you. You can see that actual person is actually an ID. There are cases where it might not be, where you have to like explicitly ensure that you set annotations here. So where you can say so if you check this actual documentation, yeah, you can see there there are cases where you might want to explicitly like set it to say that guy, this actual person ID is database generated. That means whenever you want to do an insert, you don't need to specify, the database would automatically insert it for you. So like you can actually have this on top of, but you can also read up on this, but we have it now. We do have it, and it's looking great. So the other thing that you want to now do is, because now we're done with the actual implementation, the next thing you want to do is you want to ask yourself, how do we actually now, like, what happens? Do I just run it? So another thing you have to do finally is you have to go back to the startup class and ensure that you can actually auto generate it, to make sure that it runs automatically at runtime. Like you can run your migration at runtime without having to do it manually all the time. And how we achieve that is we actually use this actual DB database database.migrate. And so I will just copy this code because this is all I need, and then I'll go back into my startup. Just pay attention to where I'm going to put it. So for now, I just want to run in when it's development, or you can even put it outside. Let's put it outside here and actually say I'm just going to indent that properly. The first thing you want to do is you want to inject iService provider. So iService provider is it's actually used to provide you with the necessary services that has been registered. iService provider, let's just resolve that. I think it needs something. Yeah, it needs it needs that. And then what we want to do is we just want to use iService provider. I'll explain that further a little bit. I just want to put that there, and then that would create the actual scope for us that we're using to get the actual context and be able to run the migrate against that context. The thing is with the registration, you can see here when this actual application starts, the first thing it does is it actually tries to configure your services, the different services you've got. So this is it registering your services. It's registering those services like that. And then service provider can actually be used to get those services whenever you need to use them. So this is a case where I need to use them. I need to use those services within the service provider. So I use service provider to get them. Let's just copy that and paste it, because remember, again, we have two different contexts. You can actually also like do this differently, which is maybe you can you can even choose to do it within one, one scope, which is you using the same scope. So we can take this out and actually just say web context, call this web context DB, and then call that security context DB, right? And then you can just say security migrate. So we can put that in, like there. Let's just run it like that. So we can always have it like this. Then we just have one single scope we're using for the two. But basically, it's gonna run the security one, and then it's gonna run the web one, like that, to be able. So this migrate would now create the tables, and if you have any seed data like inserts that we've set up here in this application, then it will run it against the DB. But I'll show you that now. So we have it now. The next thing you want to do is make sure you've saved your files, right? Everything is saved. No, yeah, everything is fine, looking nice, looking great. You want to now run it. So you can use start debugging, which is F5, or you can use you can click it there, or you can use F5. So let's just see. Let's see. Okay. You can see it's actually compiling your code, making sure that everything is, looking good, looking great. You can see there, okay, there's a failure. Yeah, it says there is there, you can see there is already a person in the DB, so it won't be able to create it. So let's stop this and let's go to the DB. So it's complaining about this. So let's delete this table, because now we want our code to generate our actual tables, right? So let's run it again. Let's see what happens now. Okay, it's compiling it, and then you can see it's starting up your application. Then you can see it's back to where we were, which is welcome, YouTube viewers, which is, basic, right? Like you'll be wondering now, what have we done? This is what we've done. If I refresh this, you would see it would have generated all the different tables. You can see there. This is amazing. You can see it generated everything that you have there. Let's go back to this guy, which is your let's go first to this migration, which is your initial creation. You can see these are the specifications we had there, which was, I'm just going to use the first one as an example. Application, ASP.NET users. You can see there that we have ASP.NET users, and if you go there, if you check the columns, you will see that it actually matches what we have. You can see, I'm just gonna see if I can collapse that so you can see what's going on. You can see their ID, username, normalized username. So this is actually working. It's like we've been able to create, and this saves you a lot of time. You don't have to always like go back and forth, creating tables in your database and then go back to your application and do exactly the same thing by creating different things. Now you just do it in your application, and you can just create the tables from your application. So this is actually very good, especially when you're even dealing with, you're working in a team. So you can always track it just within the code, what is happening in terms of your database. So this is quite amazing. So we've actually achieved that. I'm just going to show you some the usage, which is actually just to show you that this is actually really, really working. We've been able to connect our application to our database because we need to. So the thing I want to do now is I want to inject web context in here and call it web context. Resolve it using the namespace, because you remember it's actually in its own namespace, which is that IDE data. And if you go IDE data, you can see the web context. So web context is actually there now, and what we want to do is we just want to make sure that we can actually just pass it into a field. So I'm just going to copy that that just to be quick because I really want us to be done now. Okay, and then basically we have that, and then we just setting it. So we're injecting this actual web context because this is actually registered already in our startup. So once you register anything in the startup, a service in the startup, you can easily inject it into another class like that, like how I'm just showing you guys now. You can see there. So once you specify that means so once you register it in your startup, you can always inject it and you can always use it within your. So now you're passing it into a field in this class, and then we just want to pass it now into our view model. So the view model has title, description. Remember we had this earlier on. I just want to like go on there and actually put in public, and then let's call this list of persons, and then let's call this people, because that's the plural of person, right? Or persons, or let's call it people. It's complaining about that. You just have to resolve that by including the namespace, and also it's also complaining about that class. So this is telling me now that I'm gonna have more than one person, which is multiple, right? Save that, then we go back here, and what we want to do now is we want to call the database and get the data out. But before we do that, remember we don't have anything in our persons table because it's still blank. It's really blank, you can see, but don't be afraid. I've created a script that we can use to insert quickly. I'm just gonna run that. Let's see. Oh, web to database. Okay, let's change the name of that to use our new. So let's just say use my first database, right? And then just say go. Let's execute it. Let's see. Okay, it's connecting to the DB. Yeah, you can see there we've got some executions telling us it's successful. If we go and check the table now, we can see we've got good information, right? What we now want to do is we want to go back to our actual application and be able to map that data coming back from the database into, and how do we do that? We just use the web context, because now we have web context field. Remember, it's this field that we call it now, because we've passed that what was injected, what was registered in the startup class, we've injected into this class, and now we pass it into a field that we can use, which is, this is actually like you can see that's a variable. And then we just say person. So it's actually, if I say F12, you can see it's referencing that person that is connected to the DB. And then you just want to say dot select. Okay, let's just call, or basically I just want to fetch everything actually out and just say to list. Okay, to list. So this is people, right? So we have that now. What we can also do is we can actually just do this if you feel like, there's no point, because it's actually going to map to the same thing, because remember, this people takes a list of persons, so it's going to map to the same thing. So you can do it this way, but this is where you might need to use a constructor to initialize your list, because this is actually going to be null at this point. So you just want to make sure that this is actually initialized, and the constructor is actually the first actual method that is called whenever this class is called. And this is where you initialized most of your objects, different things you want to initialize. This is where you initialize them within this method, and you can see that's the same name as your class. So once you see that, it's actually a constructor. So you just want to say new list of person, and you can just remove them. You need that. You can see there. So whenever this is called, when this is instantiated, it would just set people into an empty list. But there we can see now that passing it there. And remember, we've already configured our view to already have home view model passed into it. If I go back to that, you would see there that we already have this already coming into the space. Now what we want to do is we want to set up a table to display the people information. And how do we do that? We just have to make sure that we use we use the table. I'm sure your HTML table, that's what we're going to use. But one thing I just want to point out is when I was generating this actual application, it actually gave me some some goodies that I can use. So Bootstrap is one of them. So Bootstrap is actually a framework for UI, for building up your components much faster. If you go on the actual browser and actually search for, just say Bootstrap, you can see there it's actually used to just build up to build up your UI like as quick as possible, like responsive design. It's actually what I always use when I want to like develop things. It's really easy, and then I just have to search for whatever element or component I want to use. So this is what I want to use. I want to use table. I think I like the first one. So what I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna copy. You can see I've copied that table just to be quick. We just have to go back to our index page, and then we just have to paste that there. And what we want to do at this point is we have a first name, we have a last name. So if you go back to your person's class, where's your person's class? We see that okay, we want to display name, want to display the names and then the date created. So what we can do is we go back to our actual index page. We can just make sure that that is what we want, first, last, and then there's just a date created, right? And also this is actually a list, and this is going to be a dynamic list. So we really don't want to have all those ones I just cleaned out. Now we just need one, and we're going to loop this. So I'm just going to cut this for now and actually just use eraser syntax, which is for each. So I'm saying for each item, var item in model.people. So that means I'm fetching out the person now, or we can actually use for each person. I think that is even much more nicer. For each person in people, right? Now we're gonna just present the information here. Okay. Let's just sort this indent issues out. Okay. This a little bit. Okay, it's fine. And then we just put the necessary information that we want to put in here. So you can actually now say add person dot, you can see it gives us all those information that we need. So person ID goes there, and then we have the first name goes there, and then the last name goes there. Then we have the final one, which is the date it was created. It's created. So right now you can see it's all looking nice, right? Let's stop this, just make sure everything is fine. All the files are fine. I'm just gonna close all this just to make sure we're focusing on just this table. Let's close that one as well. Let's just run it again. So F5, if you don't want to use going to run, you can actually just use F5. And then you will be able to see the actual data coming through now. Because this is just, it's amazing what you can do. Because the thing is with this now, it's not just you connecting your application to your database. You can connect even your desktop application, to a database. You can connect a console app to a database. You can connect a lot of things. You can see there. This is actually amazing. You can see your data is coming through now. So let's just do one exercise here. I'm just gonna go in there and actually say update. I just want to update one record so you can see that I'm not messing around here. So update, let's say person. Okay, set. So we want to set, let's set my first name to my full name. Okay, and then just put a single quote and just Oluwa Femi, right? And then you just want to say where your where is very important when you're doing an update. Now make sure you put a where to know what record you actually want to like update, because you might end up like updating everything, which you don't want to do. So where person ID equals 1. So this is the one I want to change, right? So I want to change it from Femi to Oluwafemi. I'm just going to run that. That is updated now. If I say select, let's just select, let's select list from person, and then let's just run that one. You can see that now it's saying Oluwafemi. Just see that now. You can see that is Femi, right? Let's refresh this. What do you get? Oluwafemi. So that's actually it. I hope I didn't take too much time, and I hope you guys learned a lot. But this is how you actually connect, your application to your database. And I hope you guys really got a lot of value out of this session. And please don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's really encouraging when I see those notifications and say there's a new subscriber. It is really motivating. It helps me to actually say that, okay, I've got some audience now that really listens to me. So please help a brother here. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video, and keep well. Cheers.